Welcome to a special holiday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Reiter. Bill, yesterday we did part one of our gifts to the Eastern Conference. Today we're going to do part two to the Western Conference. I'm excited about that.
Let's go.
Let's do it. I'm going to lead off this time. I've got the Dallas Mavericks. And I think for the Mavericks, I'm going to give them some respect because you and I talked about this last week where we looked up and we were like, oh, yeah. The Mavs are good. The defending Western Conference champions that we had basically ignored and or not so much belittled as didn't realize hey, when you have Luka, who's an MVP candidate and finally playing like one, and Kyrie, who's playing at an all-star caliber level, and Klay Thompson is integrating pretty well, and Najee Marshall is back, and they're a good team, and I think we kind of forgot about it.
That's a great call. It's funny you say this because we had this conversation a week or two ago, and I thought about this a few days ago where I thought, still wrong. I'm still sleeping on Dallas. Wait. And by the way, how much fun is it or interesting that after sort of a sluggish start, there are several teams in the Western Conference that look as good as advertised or potentially as good as advertised.
As a quick aside on this, and by the way, the Mavs also quietly are right around top 10-ish in offense and defense. So they're ticking up the standings here. But when you were saying how exciting it is, because Oklahoma City, I think, is pretty clearly the best team in the Western Conference. But
yes.
After that, you just have a bunch of really good teams who could end up slotted at the end of the season, basically anywhere. And there's been this hand wringing. I don't know if you've talked about it. I'm sure you have on your radio show. But there's been this hand wringing for people who don't follow the NBA as closely as you and I do, that maybe there's something wrong with the NBA because there's too many threes or whatever. And JJ Redick was asked about it last week. And he was like, look, man, I'll tell you right now, there's more talent in the league now than there's ever been, a lot more than when I started. And the parity to what you're talking about in the Western Conference is an example of that.
So I do think there's, so we're crossways on this. We did this, Brad and I did this last Friday on the podcast. I think if you're an NBA fan, the NBA is as good as it's ever been. But I think if you're a general sports fan, you're less interested. And I don't know what the disconnect is. This is another thing I discovered in Vegas. Huge sample size of 6 guys, but the interest level was really low. And it was low at the games. The cup, and the league. I was just talking to my buddies, and then people at the game, I was sort of talking to fans, and a lot of them had just walked in. I don't know how Adam Silver fixes this because I think the product is really interesting. But I think the interest level is lower than it should be. So, for Adam Silver for Christmas, I'm going to get him a guru, like a wizard.
I like that. I think he could use one. And I think just one more thing that JJ threw out there was that he said that the league, and I think he's right about this, and it goes to your point, the league does a bad job at telling these stories, at building these narratives, at marketing its product. Part of the problem is that some of its best players, you and I talked about it going into the Cup final where you have the Bucks and Oklahoma City, 2 small markets, and the league wasn't exactly thrilled about it. And I went, why? You've got Giannis and you've got Dame and you've got SGA and you've got all this really young, exciting Oklahoma City Thunder team. If it's just market size, then you've got a bigger problem. You have to do a better job telling stories about these really great players.
I'm going to give another gift to the NBA. And to your exact point, I have a solution for this. And it's self-interested, but I don't care. When 10 years ago, I was asked to cover UFC for 6 or 7 months for my old employer. And I did it. And Dana White gave me 5 days where all I did was party with Dana White. And I wrote a story on Dana White. And whatever, name you other than Conor McGregor, you can get access to. He is great at that. You get access to anybody. And now you can't. But that's how the NBA has to recognize. I think it's a more fractured media and sports landscape. It doesn't have to be Bill Reiter. It can be whatever. It can be Sam Amick. It can be Howard Beck. They should be having Wembanyama pick somebody, and that guy gets it. They should be basically forcing their stars to do more access and to create stories that really resonate. I can't remember who it was. Somebody wrote a Kobe story back in the day where they got to ride from his house in Orange County to a Lakers game with him. And that was the story. And then they built a whole, I think, Sports Illustrated magazine feature around it. And it was it was the first time that I knew Kobe Bryant rather than just watching the floor. And then Kobe started courting Adrian Wojnarowski, and they courted each other. And I remember the first time they had a dinner, and I think it was Detroit after a game. It was a big deal. And I look back at Kobe, and he worthy of it. But his legend was partly built on his understanding of how to parcel out access. He would walk out of the locker room after Lakers games. He'd walk 10 feet with reporter A, and that reporter would be like exclusively to the LA Times. Then that reporter would like be tapped out, and another reporter would walk another 10 feet toward Kobe's car. And the next day, 15 different publications would have an exclusive conversation with Kobe. As it was all true. Kobe was better at marketing Kobe Bryant than the NBA is at marketing its stars. And I just think, to your point, my gift to the NBA, lean into what Kobe did, lean into what the UFC did when they were trying to win over market share. Stop treating your athletes like they're NFL players. They're not. You need more coverage, and you should give more access.
I love this. I think we just fixed the NBA. Congrats to us and to the league.
We did it.
You got the Nuggets.
All right. Do you know sometimes you get a present and you open it in front of somebody and you hate it, but you're trying to hide your face? Like my aunt once gave me a knockoff G.I. Joe. It wasn't a G.I. Joe, and they can tell. I'm worried that when
G.I.
the Nuggets,
what was it?
G.I. Mo. Oh man, that thing sucked. It was like this big. It's half a doll. I'm like, oh, mom's giving me the look. Like, you better shut your face and act happy with Aunt. Yeah, I'm worried the Nuggets are going to feel this way even though there's reports that they want him. But I'm gonna say Zach LaVine, and I'm not convinced that this works for the Nuggets. I'm not convinced that this is a good decision. And I know in a later time we can kind of go into the machinations of how this would work. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday with the Bulls. What I'm really saying is offensive firepower. The Denver needs some help, and they need some help from Joker. And I think I've gotten to the point where I don't want to say I don't believe that MPJ and Jamal Murray are both going to continue to let him down, but I'm not confident enough that one of them is going to figure it out, that I want to get them. They want LaVine. If it's not LaVine, I might get them the G.I. Mo. I got to go out and find somebody, but I want to give them some offensive help for Joker.
I think that them even considering this signals that they think they're not good enough as currently constituted. And you and I had talked coming into the season and also during the season that if they were going to unplug somebody, it's probably going to be MPJ. Basically has to be now, especially for Zach LaVine, because you can't trade Jamal Murray with the new contract and you can't trade Aaron Gordon. So it ends up being MPJ. But I think it's really telling that in a season when Michael Porter Jr. is having one of his best shooting seasons, he needs more volume. We both agree that they need more volume from three and he needs more volume. But in the season when he's shooting the ball pretty efficiently, that they're thinking about going, yeah, he's not good enough. We got to get somebody else. And that somebody else might be Zach LaVine.
Here's the other factor that I thought about that they may be right on. LeBron gets credit, rightfully so, for making players so much better than they actually are when they're around him. This was true a lot in Cleveland. There's like the enhancement effect. Joker's the same thing. I mean, Jamal Murray and MPJ have never had any true individual accolades of any kind of their own outside of team awards, team success. So maybe Zach LaVine, who's not amazing, is really great when he's playing with Joker. If Joker can make Jamal Murray and MPJ guys that occasionally we think are or can be superstars, maybe Zach LaVine, for all of his limitations, is a very different player as a Bull than he is as Joker's teammate. Maybe they know something.
Yeah, maybe. And also we should say that Zach LaVine, he had been injured. He's been on this like really weird Chicago Bulls disastrous experiment for a while now, but he's playing extremely well this season. So yeah, like playing alongside Joker might be good for him. And you know what, going to Chicago and like running the show, if you're Michael Porter Jr., that might be good for him too. I've got the Golden State Warriors. I went back and forth on this one. I thought about maybe like some chill for Draymond because he's still like, I watch games and I'm like, he influences the game all the time in ways that don't show up in the box score. And then he'll just start screaming at a ref for no reason or reasons that he thinks are valid. And I'm like,
it's no reason.
Like 10 notches, buddy. Like, but put Draymond aside. I'm going to go a new home for Kuminga. And the reason why is what we were talking about on the previous Eastern Conference show about Jimmy Butler being in the right spot. I think he should just stay put in Miami. I actually think Draymond had said previously that he and a lot of people in the Warriors organization think Kuminga's next. I don't think so, but even if that's true, next isn't now. They're trying to win now. And I think it would be better for the Warriors to move Kuminga on and get something that can help them really try to win now, and for Kuminga to go find his own show and run it somewhere else. I think it would be, he's a good trade piece. They could get value for him. And I think like if you're trying to do something with Steph and Draymond before the window really closes, he's your best shot at doing it. I think that you move him on.
I mean, it hurts me because I like Kuminga so much, but I'm not going to criticize someone else's gift to somebody. I'm just going to lean into it and hope it brings joy to everybody.
I haven't figured out what the something else is, but I do like the idea academically of turning him into something else. Somehow, by the way, and again, producer Aaron screwed this whole thing up. I end up having to do the Boston Celtics yesterday on the Eastern Conference, and then you get my beloved Houston Rockets.
Right. But I got them a great gift. So when you're shopping for your friend's friend, there's a lot of pressure, right? Like John knows the Rockets inside out. I gotta get them. If it doesn't go well, they're gonna talk about me to each other. Like, oh, Bill screwed it up. I know.
See what Bill got him.
Yeah. Oh man, what a loser. So I went out and I found the world's best shooting coach. This is what I'm giving the Rockets. 20, it depends on the day, but 25, 26, 27 in shooting percentage this year. They do so many things well. And we saw this against the Thunder where that in the cup game, God, was it a week and a half ago now or a week ago, whatever it was, where in the first half they could sort of pull them down in the mud and slog it out and not be able to shoot because they could stop the Thunder from shooting. In the second half, the Thunder said, hold my beer, actually, we can do offense too. And I worry that at the level that we think maybe they can ascend to this year or at least compete at, that's going to be a problem. These are a lot of young players. Presumably they're going to improve as the years go along, including in this respect. But I'm going to send them the world's – I haven't identified this person yet. There's several guys I know who tell me that's him, so I got to sort of narrow this down. But the world's best shooting coach, just if you can improve even a little bit your ability to just shoot the basketball, it takes the Rockets to a whole other level.
It really would. I mean, like that's the one obvious glaring hole in their game is that they are like super inefficient as a shooting team. And the problem is a lot of their guys, their best scorers like Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green on any given night where you're like, they're volume scorers, right? And some nights they're really going to help you, but some nights they sink you. I mean, there are nights when, you know, those two guys can't throw the ball in the ocean. You're like, man, this is just absolutely crushing us. We're getting empty possession after empty possession. So I like that. That's nicely done. You've done well by my Houston Rockets. Los Angeles Clippers, Bill, the second team in Los Angeles. I'm going to get them Kawhi Leonard. Nah, just kidding. We know that that's not going to happen. He's always broken, and I wouldn't do that to them. I want to get them more people to go see the Intuit Dome because I went and I was blown away by that place. That is the future is now, man. That place, the whole thing. I went and for people who missed the show after I came back from seeing the Intuit Dome in person, the whole thing is facial recognition, which is like it blew my mind away. Like your ticket is your face. If you want to go and buy something from the team store, there's no money exchanging hands. There's nobody to cash you out. You just pick up a hat and walk out the door. And all of a sudden you get a push alert to your phone. It knows that you took it. If you go get a beer, same deal. You just grab it and walk out. That place is unbelievable. The in-game experience is awesome. Ballmer crushed that place. People need to go see it.
It's amazing. So I'm going to take my son Henry as a fan. I've been a bunch as a reporter. I'm going to take Henry. So we'll be one of the fans. We're going to be one of the gifts. They don't want me, but maybe they'll take.
But Henry is going. Did you figure out what game you're taking him to?
No, I gotta like look at it and be strategic for who because I don't want him to be a Clippers fan.
Well, so maybe we have a show team outing. And we get producer Aaron to go and we all go and rock out because that place is amazing.
I'm down. I would love to do that. All right. That's
we'll
a
talk
gift
to
to
producer
me.
Aaron about that. All right. You got the Lakers, the real team in Los Angeles.
You went nice. Sometimes you got to give somebody like a pot or a pan or if it's really bad, like you give them deodorant. You're like, I'm sorry. I know it's a toothpaste, right? So it's a mean gift, even though they need it. This is for the Lakers. I'm giving them a new general manager. I know that there are all kinds of obstacles. I understand LeBron has a lot of sway. I've just convinced myself that Rob Pelinka has basically ridden the sort of weird wave between Magic Johnson. Remember Magic Johnson just quit? Somebody's got to tell
I was
Genie.
there that day. I was literally there that day. And I was like,
I'm out
I'm
out of here
yet. It was amazing.
I haven't told, right. So like when that happens, like, okay, next guy up, here you go. And Pelinka sort of ridden the wave that everyone rides with LeBron James. I'm not convinced that JJ Redick's the guy, but even if you are, that's a LeBron decision. I'm not that impressed by Pelinka. And I think navigating the post-LeBron reality, whenever that comes, is going to be really tricky and really difficult. And I don't think Rob Pelinka is equipped to do that. I don't. So I'm going to give the Lakers Rob Pelinka, even though it's a bit of an insult, a replacement for Rob Pelinka, even though it's a bit of an insult, because I do think that they're about to navigate a difficult reality in a year or two or three, whatever it is. And I don't think he's up to the job.
I've made this point previously. I'll make it one more time. I'll put the quarter in and wind you up here. He did win a championship. He's a championship general manager. I think anybody.
David Blatt almost won a championship. I mean, is David Blatt? David Blatt like What does he coach pickleball now in Uruguay or Estonia? I mean, come on.
Uruguay is a great poll. Last time I saw David Blatt, he was coaching Olympiakos in Greece, and he was coaching against Panathinaikos when they had and that was where David Blatt was. So Godspeed
his
to
career
David
went Blatt.
It didn't go great. Yeah. I think like any general manager who has LeBron James on his team is beholden to LeBron James's whims, right? LeBron wants his kid. You're going to draft his kid.
Yeah.
LeBron wants his podcast partner. They're going to hire his podcast partner.
But it doesn't make him a good, like, I think David Griffin's a good GM. Maybe now he's had bad luck with injuries and stuff. But I thought that was true for Griffin in Cleveland. But I think he's done a nice job in New Orleans, even though the sort of the results haven't shown that. But, it's an outcomes-based business, but just really it's like the process you go through that you should be focused on. I don't think Pelinka is that impressive. I don't.
Well, a little help for the Lakers. We'll see if that works out for them. We're going to continue our gift-giving episode for the Western Conference after a quick break. This is Beyond the Arc.
At CBS Sports Golazo Network, we're bringing you the game.
Madness of Messi arrives!
Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Whoa.
And all day long!
24/7.
Welcome back to a special holiday edition of Beyond the Arc. You can get us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Please download, subscribe, leave a review. And if you're listening on Spotify, if you look below the play button on the Spotify app in full screen mode, you can leave us a comment and tell us what you think about the show. I think we are now on to the Memphis Grizzlies, one of my other beloved teams, Bill. I'm going to get some bubble wrap for Ja because I love the way he plays. I love watching him play. He fell on his hip earlier this season, trying to throw down an alley-oop that was like unbelievably athletic and dynamic, and he missed 8 games. And then last week, he had a sore back, and what happens? He goes for a dunk, or a layup rather, and there's contact, and he falls on his back, and immediately he doesn't come back into the game. Now, that was in the game that they absolutely throttled the Golden State Warriors, so they didn't need to bring him back. But this is one of those situations where, like, there are certain players in sports where they just go 1,000 miles an hour and you can't stop them no matter what you say or what you do. Joel Embiid is one of those guys. He's a big body. We've seen how that has hurt him. Michael Vick used to play that way in the NFL. Back in the day, Allen Iverson played that way. He was actually like pretty durable, remarkably so. I don't know that Ja is, and I don't know that you can turn off like his just full go mode.
No, I think this is who he is and how he plays. And you just have to hold your breath and hope he doesn't
break,
fall on his side on a dunk and break into. Yeah, you hope he's not Humpty Dumpty. I mean, you can't change, because changing how he plays is changing who he is. I mean, that is his makeup. So
obviously, athletically, he's just like he's an unbelievable athlete. But what I'm saying is like that obviously has a lot of value, no doubt about it. But when he's out on the floor, I think his greatest value to the Grizzlies and him getting to the rack whenever he wants is of value as well. But his greatest value is like his vision is way underrated. He makes that team better. He's an otherworldly distributor. And like, okay, if you have to throttle back just a little bit on your athleticism just to make sure you're out, I know he's not going to do it, but just being available is so important.
Not to go down a tangent, but how insane is how talented the 1 and 2 picks in that draft were, and how injury prone. Like who's more reliable, Zion or Ja? It's Ja, right?
It's Ja.
Which is crazy. But when Zion plays, which is rarely, but when he plays, his team is really, really good. Yeah. You're right. Like Ja Morant needs bubble wrap, and he is Cal Ripken compared to Zion. It's insane how that draft became.
Yeah, it's true. I got the Pelicans coming up. Maybe I'll give them the same thing. All right, you got the Wolves, I think.
I gave someone else bubble wrap, by the way. So I'm like, now I'm trying to like, when you're at a group thing and someone else gives a great gift, you're like, I can't give the same gift. I'm gonna get the Timberwolves a marriage counselor. I don't know if you saw this last week, but after the loss of the Knicks, Anthony Edwards basically talked about how like they don't have identity on offense. He basically was criticizing Julius Randle, who had a pretty good game, by the way, on that game last Thursday or whatever it was. They don't like each other. And I like Ant a lot, but we're starting to have a pattern here where he was kind of critical last year, and he was kind of sort of had a lot to say in the Olympics and a lot to say about the old timers. And now he has a lot to say about, I think it's Julius Randle. And we know that Gobert's not always popular. So I'm going to get them like a world-class marriage counselor. You guys are going to do 45-minute sessions twice a week for the next 8 weeks. It's going to be a lot of crying. There's going to be some Kleenex. But in the end, you're gonna be more together, hopefully, and it's good. Or sometimes a buddy of mine's a marriage counselor. Sometimes your job is to fix it. Sometimes your job is to just work you toward a divorce in a way that's not destructive, or in this case, a trade deadline. So marriage counselor for the Timberwolves.
What do you think it was like? I think that's great because you're right. There's been multiple times this season where they've hinted that they don't really like each other and the chemistry is off. And before that game where Karl Anthony Towns came back to play in Minnesota for the first time ever, and after the game, him and Ant were like all over each other, hugging each other, hanging out. Yep. And this is in a game where the Knicks throttled the Wolves. What do you think it was like to watch Cat, if you're a Wolves fan, or the Wolves just demolish you? He had a game, Bill. I just pulled up the stats again. 32 points, 20 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 for 5 from 3. He's the first player in NBA history to do that line. And he did it against the team. If you're the Wolves, like, I know that it was a money thing and you've got this ownership issue and you've got a second issue, but aren't you like just pining for what you lost or gave away? He looked
And there's another issue is Anthony Edwards doesn't have to stay in Minnesota, right? We live in an era where guys, if they get pissed off enough, can just demand they go somewhere else. And while I'm sort of I'm from Iowa, just south of there. Yeah. I mean, you don't want Ant to see Cat, celebrating his parade in New York City or whatever, and just decide to hell with this place. They traded away my guy. It doesn't work. I mean, I understand the reason they did it. We've had a lot of conversations about them and the cap and the money, and they don't know who their owner is. But Cat playing well for the Knicks is not exactly a great situation for Ant feeling good about where he's at.
Just as a quick aside, I know we're doing the Western Conference, but in the Eastern Conference, I just love watching the Knicks offense play. All right, I'm up next. I've got the Pelicans. All right, so the Pelicans, we talked about the bubble wrap thing. I'm going to get some flowers and a get well soon card and a little teddy bear, and I'm going to take it over, and maybe a bottle of scotch for poor David Griffin, because the hospital Pelicans, look, this year, injuries to Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, DeJounte Murray, Herb Jones, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy. The list goes on. Jose Alvarado, Jordan Hawkins. At some point this season, they've all been injured for short or long stretches. This is a team that you and I, when we were looking at it on paper prior to the season in our preseason rankings, we're like, this team could be good. They could be plucky. They could be a tough out in the postseason. And they have been none of those things because they can't get healthy. And poor David Griffin, man, what a bummer.
Let me know when you do that. I'll drink that scotch with David. I like scotch. I've got the Thunder up next. I was gonna give them bubble wrap, but you already took it. So I'm gonna. This was my backup gift. I'm getting them a sports psychologist for Alex Caruso, because one of the things we saw in that Cup loss last week was they don't shoot the ball particularly well, and they generate a lot of their offense off turnovers, and that is not necessarily a recipe for massive success if a team's able to guard against that. Caruso has been brutal from the three-point line this year, but we know that he can shoot the deep ball. So it's a small little gift. We're going to give him a sports psychologist. We're going to work on his confidence. We're going to get his shot working a little bit, and it's going to be a small but maybe important, just another little weapon, a little addition for the Thunder.
And that's a good one. They're so good. I mean, it's kind of when we did the Eastern Conference and we're talking about what do you get the team that has everything with the Boston Celtics. They're Boston Celtics West, man. They're absolutely loaded. I've got the Phoenix Suns. This is an easy one. You know the song, All I Want for Christmas Was My Two Front Teeth? Yes. As it pertains to the Phoenix Suns, their two front teeth is Kevin Durant. Through the end of last week, they were 1-9 without Kevin Durant. and 13-2 with him. I know that they had a bad loss last week, but he was asked about this and he got his back up a little bit about it. He's like, well, we had a whole bunch of players out, and it wasn't just me and whatever. It is basically Kevin Durant.
It is.
So forget about the supporting cast. And this is a little bit of an indictment of Devin Booker that he wasn't able to buoy that team all by himself. But he is easily the best player on that team. He's a top 10 player in the NBA. If he's out on the floor, they can beat anybody. And if he isn't, they can't. It's that simple.
I love that gift. I'm giving Portland snow to try to keep DeAndre Ayton away from the game, that team as much as possible.
An ice storm?
Yeah, just all you want for Christmas is a little snow or some ice or even just fog so that DeAndre can't show up. You're gonna send people. They're gonna take him. I won't go. I don't think it actually snows in Portland. I don't really know. Producer Aaron would know, but it doesn't matter. The weather's weird right now. It feels like we live in a simulation sometimes. Snowstorm, occasional flurries, so DeAndre Ayton won't show up to the building.
That's a good one. I still don't know why he didn't just call an Uber. Somebody else could drive him to the arena. I don't know. I got the Sacramento Kings. I'm going to give them some luck, Bill. They've been really unlucky this season. As we record this, they're on the outside of the play-in looking in. And it could be, if some games had broken the right way this season, they could be a solid play-in team. Through the end of last week, Bill, in clutch games, which are 5 points or less in the final 5 minutes, they were 6-10 this season. They came back from 23 down against the Nuggets in a game where I was like, oh man, they're at home. Here come the Kings. This is finally going to be one of those close games that they win. And then they lost that game by a point after being down 23 and then going ahead. I mean, I think that Fox and Sabonis and DeMar DeRozan, there's been varying returns on that, but I think offensively, at least it works. And certainly with Malik Monk, it works. Now they get throttled defensively, but just winning some of these close games, 6-10 in the clutch is brutal.
They were supposed to be the clutch team because they had Fox and they had DeRozan, both guys.
Yes,
that
was the whole point.
Yeah,
it hasn't worked. Right. So a little luck.
I went extravagant for the Spurs, right? I went. We're talking a semi tractor trailer full of the following things: French onion soup, okay, rare books, just nonstop rare books. And
I see where you're going with this.
And I also was able to get a sneak peek, totally off the record in the vault, of the new Star Wars trilogy, that what they're sort of putting together, because Victor Wembanyama is French, so I'm assuming he likes French soup. By the way, a little funny story. If you go to Paris, what I've done, and you don't ask for French onion soup. It's just the onion soup, idiot. It just says onion soup on the menu. You're in France. You don't need to look for the French part. I didn't know that. It was very embarrassing. It was very embarrassing.
I'm sure that they took it with a plum.
They loved it. They were actually, they're very nice there, but they were amused. And it was, yes, you're stupid.
Yeah.
Here it is. It was really good, though. And he loves to read. So I'm just sending all kinds of rare books, first editions. And then producer Aaron reminded me he's a big Star Wars fan, and there's some new trilogy coming out. It's all wrapped in secrecy. So we're going to George Lucas Productions. We're going to, even though they run the other company, we're going to Disney, and we're getting Wemby access to sort of the early storyboards.
Love this.
And we're just keeping him happy in San Antonio. You're happy in San Antonio, buddy. You love it.
If you take him to Disneyland, go on the ride, the Rise of the Resistance ride. It's unbelievable. It's one of the great rides that oh my God, it's unbelievable. You're in the Star Wars experience. It's really, really cool. I got the last one for the Western Conference gifts. I've got the Utah Jazz. This one's easy for me. Some trade partners for dealer Danny Ainge. I mean, they can't move Lauri Markkanen because he signed that deal the day after the deadline, so he could have basically a functional no trade clause. But they've got a whole bunch of other pieces that would be useful to other teams and would in turn help the Utah Jazz tank. John Collins, who I was pretty down on for his entire career, is quietly having a very good season and would be very attractive to some other teams. Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, your mileage may vary on Walker Kessler. I think everything must go. You pull a Brooklyn West and move all those guys. They've been sitting on them for far too long. And there are times when the Jazz look a little too functional, and they can undo that, Bill.
I love that. The problem is trying to get dealer Danny trade partners is sort of like trying to get Mike Tyson a sparring partner. I mean, it's how that's going to go.
Everybody's suspicious. That's the
Yeah.
problem. When you've won every trade you've ever made, people think that you're trying to use car salesman them, and it's a little bit of an
Right.
issue.
Right.
But everybody but Laurie should be on the block for the Utah Jazz. This was super fun. If you missed our Eastern Conference one, go back and do it. We did that one yesterday. We're going to take a couple days off for the holidays. Bill and I will be around because it's a big Christmas Day, NBA Day, 5 games on Christmas Day. Will be on CBS Sports HQ for those, so come and join us for that. But otherwise, I will be back on Friday with Brad Botkin. Bill's going to take a little time with the family, and then Bill will be back with me next week.